towards nation building. NATO wanted to extend the authority of the Afghan president Hamid Karzai beyond Kabul. Britain took on Helmand province.
It was suggested that I should go down to this place called Lashkargah. And everybody said, look, it's not entirely safe, but you'll be okay.
Boarding an old Russian helicopter, Britain's Foreign Office minister decided to take a look for himself at Lashkargah, capital of Helmand province.
And as we came into Lashkargah, I saw down below me this Beaugest fort. The commander was a guy called Colonel Hogberg. I said, what's it like here? And he said, well, sir, it ain't the end of the earth, but you can see it from here. He said, you could be wandering into a fight between two tribes or sub-tribes or villages over water rights. You could run into a drugs convoy. And he pointed out to me some of these drugs columns actually had anti-aircraft missiles on them. You could be running into Taliban or just a village that didn't like strangers. He said, we don't hang around because you never know who's shooting at you. I mean, this really struck me at the time as being an observation we ought to take a bit of notice of.
Helmand had little infrastructure, few public services, no functioning security, economy or justice system. The Blair government's vision for Helmand, however, did not lack for ambition.
The original vision was that Karzai would be able to create a growing and sustainable peace, and that this would create a space in which governance would spread. And some people likened this to creating Belgium in a couple of years.
A team of experts was dispatched to Helmand by Whitehall in late 2005. Their task was to plan the delivery of this vision, with troops providing protection and expected home in just 3 years.
It was a task of biblical proportions. It was a medieval province, vast open spaces. There was no infrastructure. I remember flying across the province's only road. Corruption ran from top to bottom. So when one looked at all of this, one saw a rudderless expanse of not much, where the principal economy was drugs.
Some estimates said that 80% of the population were illiterate, and that extended to many key functions in government, including the director of education, who could not read or write.
We didn't know how many police stations there were, and the chief of police wasn't really sure either. There were sporadic outbursts of violence because of the drug trafficking. And when I asked the American officer what background research I should do to understand Helmand a little better, he said I should watch The Sopranos.
On their return home for Christmas, the planners met up with their Whitehall masters. The planners told them their vision for Helmand was unrealistic.
The overwhelming impression I had of that afternoon was of the clock ticking.
The conclusion that that this was not achievable in 3 years was not an acceptable conclusion.
There was an unforgiving timeline, and there was no time for discussion.
The planners were told to get on with it, but they weren't the only ones asking awkward questions. The Foreign Office minister wrote to the Ministry of Defence.
We had planned to go down there with 3,300 troops. We had 30,000 in Northern Ireland. Are we sure that we're going to be able to do something about this? And have we got enough helicopters? Have we got enough water? Can we do all of this?
The generals said yes, yes, and yes. The military momentum was unstoppable. Britain was going to Helmand, come what may. 16 Air Assault was the brigade chosen to provide protection for the reconstruction mission. They did anticipate some fighting.
There was an awful lot of grenade launcher practice going on down the ranges. And there wasn't much of a queue for the development brief. There are a lot of stripped-down vehicles going past with 50 cals on the top. This was, I think, every soldier's dream, Afghanistan. Hugely historically resonant, extraordinary country, classic soldiering. Perhaps as a former soldier myself, I understand that. My sense was that they had come with a larger place in the plan for malleting the Taliban.
No, I mean, I dispute that. I mean, I'd been in the military for 24 years. I'd been on a lot of operations. I knew the consequences of the wrong use of force. I'd been in Afghanistan twice before.
The force deployed gave a maximum of only 800 fighting soldiers, so the reconstruction mission was limited to the central area of Helmand, around the capital Lashkargah.
Out on patrol in Helmand, the British troops have arrived and are introducing themselves to their new neighbours.
I'm good, fine, thank you. How are you? Does he understand why the British soldiers are in Lashkargah?
No, sir, he doesn't know.
From the moment that troops arrived, Helmand's Afghan governor warned that his authority was being undermined by lawless gunmen in the north. He urged the army to deal with them.
His argument was very much okay, saying, I need you to make sure that the flag of Afghanistan flies over all of the district centres.
Yeah. Did you resist that to begin with or not?
We did. We made it very clear that we were going to be extremely limited in our capability to do other operations.
The generals in London judged that deploying north was unsustainable, but the Helmand governor persevered and was supported by the British Embassy in Kabul and the Secret Intelligence Service. By late May, the generals relented. The order was given to defend positions up to 70 miles from the reconstruction area. By late June, the army was thinly spread across 3 new flashpoints and about to stretch to yet a 4th, the town of Sangin.
There were no angels in Sangin. There were 2 warring drug cartels, effectively, in Sangin. And here we were about to deploy British troops in between those 2 drugs cartels. I did everything I possibly could to engage anyone who had decision-making authority to say, this is madness, this cannot be happening.
But it was. The arrival of the troops stirred up a hornet's nest.
I was furious watching that type of decision-making that ended up uprooting the entire plan that we'd devised.
The summer of 2006 saw the British Army engaged in some of its fiercest fighting in half a century.
Watch it shake! Watch it shake! Pass up, look at us!
How does this compare to Iraq?
Oh, it's a lot worse. A lot, yeah, it's a lot better. No, we didn't see any action in Iraq. About 8 at more or less every day can guarantee small arms fire incoming, like.
Pinned down in a series of Alamos across the north of Helmand, British soldiers became magnets for attacks from the Taliban, drug gangs, and locals just angry at the presence of foreigners.
A lot of the people we were killing were effectively the farmers who'd had AK-47s put in their hands by the Taliban leadership.
Part-time Talibs, really?
Part-time Talibs. Part-time Talibs are not very well-trained ones, and we killed huge numbers of them. And I don't think that was to our liking at all. And we were conscious that really for every one we killed, we were probably actually fueling the insurgency.
The general responsible for overseeing day-to-day operations in Helmand was Sir Peter Wall, now head of the British Army.
The mission changed dramatically.
No, I don't think the mission did change, actually.
Really?
No. It changed in what, do you mean the aim changed? Or the mode of delivery changed?
Well, it changed in the sense that the original mission was a sort of hearts and minds
we'll help bring governance mission to this limited area in the centre of Helmand. And within a matter of weeks, 16 air assault were fighting for their lives and a series of Alamos, and no governance, none at all, taking place.
Had we not gone north, what would have happened in your estimation?
That's not for me to say. What you were in charge of the operational decision.
Yeah.
So what's your estimation?
I think Afghan governance in Helmand would have collapsed. I think you'd have seen the Taliban breaking out, and you'd have had your Alamos in different parts of Helmand.